Okay, so last time we discussed the Ravas Chakira. Ravas Chakira of when the Chum say Chatinezek Meguf, Chatinezek in the case of Tzroros, are you going to pay Megufo or are you going to pay Me'aliyah? That was Ravas Chakira. We tried to address it based on the Brisa of Hidas Vitas. We rejected that. Then we brought up the Mishnah and Daf Chafal and Beis, where there's a machlokus between, well, the Mishnah doesn't present the machlokus, the Brisa fills in the details of the machlokus between the Chum and Rav Elazar. But according to the Chum, in the case of Kel Shnat the Charara, where the Gachelis burns down the Gadish, the dog brings a cake, it's stuck to the bottom of the cake as a Gachelis. At least we're going to assume that way for now. And it brings over the cake, it eats the cake, and the gachelis burns down the gadish, a pile of grain. So how much are you going to have to pay? The charara is easy. You're going to have to pay nezek shalom. That's a case of shein. The gadish, how much you're going to pay? According to the chum, you pay chatzin nezek, and the Brisa tells us you pay megufo. Now, if that's the case, we are going to assume that this Mishnah is a case of Tzroros. If it's a case of Tzroros, then you see that according to the Chamim, for a case of Tzroros, you're going to pay Chatzin Ezek and you're paying Megufo. So that seems to address Rava's question. The Gemara says you can't address Rava's question that way because of Rav Elazar's sheet. The Brisa tells us Rav Elazar holds you pay Nezek Shalim and you pay Megufo. If this is in fact a case of Tzroros as a result of typical behavior, there's no way Rav Elazar can say you pay Nezek Shalim and you also pay Megufo, because if he says Nezek Shalim, that means he's in Sumchiz's camp. If he's in Sumchiz's camp, Sumchiz would obviously hold that you pay not Megufo, but Me'aliyah. So now, at the next stage of the Gemara, we have one of two options. Either we're going to say, you're right, this can't be a case of Tzroros, but if we say it's not a case of Tzroros of Orche, then we're not going to be able to address Rava's question. Or we're going to have to say, actually, it is a case of Tzroros of Orche, but we're going to have to figure out how is it possible for Elazar to say Nezek Shalim and Megufo. So the first attempt is to say, you know what, it's not a case of Tzroros. Now wait a second. If it's not a case of Tzroros, then we're going to go back to what we thought before. We're going to say that why did the Chum say Chati Nezek in this case? Well, there's only one other reason why I would say Chati Nezek in the case of Nezikin, and that's because it's a case of Tam, which for our purposes we're just going to call that Karen. It's a result of abnormal behavior, it's atypical behavior, which we could also refer to as Mishuna, or the Gemara refers to it as Bidishani. It deviated from its normal behavior. Now, wait a second. If the dog is deviating from its normal behavior, how did it deviate from its normal behavior? So Rashi tells us it's because at this point we're going to assume the dog didn't just pick up the cake and stuck to the bottom of the cake was a coal. The dog took the coal in its mouth, which is not normal behavior for the dog. The dog takes the coal in its mouth, brings it over to the gadish. Now the gacheles, that coal burns down the pile of grain. So in that case, where it's a case of Karen of Meshuneh, where the animal is behaving abnormally, so there the Chum are going to say, hang on a second, the Chum are going to tell us that you're going to pay Chatzi Nezek. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Of course you're going to pay Chatzi Nezek. It's a case of Karen, it's a case of Tam. And of course, like any other case of Karen, you're going to pay Megufo. The only question is, well, wait a second. If it's a case of abnormal behavior, whose other opinion do we have to deal with? We have to deal with Rav Elazar. Wait a second, but what does Rav Elazar say? Rav Elazar says you pay Nezek Shalim. He's going to say that you pay Nezek Shalim in a case of atypical behavior? Is that true? Does that make sense? Rav Elazar is going to say you pay Nezek Shalim. By the way, he also says Megufo. He's going to say you pay Nezek Shalim in a case of abnormal behavior? The answer to this is that, yeah, actually, this is a Gemara later on. This is a Mishnah and Daf Chavdalet and Beis and Baba Kama. In Daf Chavdalet and Beis and Baba Kama, the Gemara brings a discussion regarding Karen and discusses, and then when it comes to Karen, when an ox is goring, let's say, for the first time, how much you're going to have to pay. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah I should say rather, says, well, wait a second. If it's a case of Rishus Harabim, Karen Rishus Harabim, well then you're going to have to pay Chatzi Nezek. But what about when it's B'shus and Nizek? What about if your animal, your ox, goes into the Nizek's backyard and then it damages? What's the halacha in that case? So that's a machlokas between the Chachamim and Reb Tarfon. According to the Chachamim say in this case you're going to pay Chatzi Nezek, just like Rishus Harabim. But Reb Tarfon says actually no, that's not true. Reb Tarfon says you're going to pay Nezek Shalim. for the case of Karen B'Rshus HaNizik. So what do you see? You see that when an animal is behaving abnormally in Rishus HaNizik, Reb Tarfon says you're going to pay Nezek Shalom. But Ezra, we're going to go through his lumdas of exactly how he got there, how he said that, how he comes to this conclusion that you're going to pay Nezek Shalom. And that's not important for now, but for now all you have to know is that according to Reb Tarfon, it's true. For a case of Karen, as a result of abnormal behavior, you're going to pay Nezek Shalom. If that's the case, I have precedent for this idea for Rav Elazar. That for Rav Elazar now, I'm telling you that Rav Elazar is holding, you pay Nezek Shalom, and we're going to discuss Megufo later, how it is that he's also going to hold Megufo. But how can Rav Elazar say Nezek Shalom if it's a case of Karen? The answer is because he holds like Reb Tarfon. He holds like Reb Tarfon and says that in case of Karen, you're going to pay Nezek Shalom. And we'll get to how it is possible for Reb Tarfon to hold that you pay Nezek Shalom Megufo. But either way, so at this stage of the Gemara though, what does this mean though in terms of Rava's question? Remember, Rava's question was that in the case of Tzroros of Orche, Tzroros as a result of normal behavior, with the Chum say you pay Chatzin Nezek, do you pay Megufo or do you pay Me'aliyah? Well, at this stage, the case of Kel Shanat Harara is no longer a discussion of Tzroros. Now it's a discussion of Karen. It's a case of Tam. If that's the case at this stage in the Gemara, we can't address Rava's question. So the Gemara says, well, wait a second. You don't really have to do that so fast. You don't actually have to say that the case is not a case of Tzroros. We still want to be able to salvage this case in order to address Rava's question. But in order to salvage this case, what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to justify how is it possible for Rav Elazar over here to say you're going to pay Nezek Shalom in a case of Tzroros and also say that you're paying Megufa. How is that possible? If he's saying Nezek Shalom, that means that he's siding with Sumchas. But if he's siding with Sumchas, then he should be saying that you pay Me'ali in the case of Tzroros. So how is it possible that in this case, he says that you pay Megufo? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you how. This is because of the Mishnah Amemheim and Beis in Baba Kama. The Mishnah Amemheim and Beis in Baba Kama, the Mishnah Baba Kama Memheim Beis discusses the case of Shmir Bechusa, which we discussed when we learned Hakonis. When you do minimal, hang on a second. When you do minimal Shmira, in this case, on your animal, so let's say you take your ox, you put it into a pen and you lock the gate. Now the ox gets out somehow and does damage. Are you going to be chayiv for the damages that it does? After all, you did a shmira. So it's a 3 machlokas tanaim. But the one that we have to know for now is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda tells us, if you did a shmira b'chutz, if you did a minimal shmira, it depends if your animal's a tam or a muad. If your animal's, let's say, an ox, and it's never gored before, so then it gets out and it damages, how much are you going to be chayiv to pay? Chatzi nezek. Believe it or not. You're going to be chayiv to pay chatzi nezek. But, if the animal does this a bunch of times, and then it becomes a muad, how much do you have to pay? You're pater. So Rav Ada Bar Ava comes along in the Gemara and he says, wait a second. That doesn't make any sense. Rav Ada Bar Ava comes along and he says, that doesn't make any sense. How could it be that the first time that the animal does damage, you pay Chatzin Nezek? Does it the second time, you're going to be chayiv Chatzin Nezek? Does it a bunch of times, now it's a muad, now you're pater? How could that be? So therefore, Rav Ada Bar Ava says, when Rav Yehuda says that for muad you're pater, he doesn't really mean that you're pater entirely. He holds, of course, you're going to have to pay at least Chatzin Nezek's worth. The only question is, are you going to be chayiv to pay more than Chatzin Nezek? In other words, Rav Yehuda holds to the concept of tzad tamus bimkoma omedes. That the tam aspect of this animal is bimkomo menes. It stays in its place, meaning to say you're always going to have to pay Chatzin Nezek's worth of damage. The question is, beyond Chatzin Nezek, are you going to have to pay for the muad aspect? In other words, for the other half of damages. And so for that, Rav Yehuda says, as long as you did a Shmir B'chusa, you're not going to have to pay more than Chatzin Nezek's worth of damage. Now, wait a second, though. Whenever we talk about tam, remember, whenever we're talking about tam or muad, there's always two questions we have to ask. We have to ask, how much do you pay? And from what do you pay? So if I'm telling you now that you're going to have to pay for tzad tamos, that's going to be manifest, number one, in terms of Chatzin Nezek, but that's also going to be manifest in terms of megufo. And so therefore, based on this idea of Rav Ada bar Ava, of Tzad Tamas B'Mkom Medes, that even when an animal's a muad, you're still going to have to pay something. You're going to have to pay Chatzi Nezek's worth of damage. And that Chatzi Nezek's worth of damage that you're paying for an animal that's a muad, you're going to be paying megufo. And so this is how we're going to use this now to address, to justify Rav Elazar's opinion. Remember, what was Rav Elazar's opinion? We said that according to Rav Elazar said in the case of Kel Shanat Charara, if we're going to assume that the case of Kel Shanat Charara, and it brings along the Gachelas burns it down, and we're going to assume that it's a case of Tzroros, we said, how could Rav Elazar say that you pay Nezek Shalim and you pay Megufa? If he says Nezek Shalim, that means that he's in Sumchaz's camp. But if he's in Sumchaz's camp, then you should have to pay Me'aliyah. How could he say that you pay Megufo? The answer is, how could he say that you pay Megufo? Because he's assuming like which opinion? It's because of the concept of Tzad Tamas B'Mkom Medes. So when Rav Elazar, let's plug it in now. When Rav Elazar tells us that in the case of Kel Shanat Charara, you're going to pay Nezek Shalem, why does he say you pay Nezek Shalem? That's because he holds like Sumchas. It's a case of Tzroros. So you're going to have to pay full damages. But when he says that you pay Megufo, why does he say that? It has nothing to do with Sumchas. That's because of Rav Yehuda. That's because of Rav Yehuda's principle of Tzad Tamas. And so for Tzad Tamas, that's going to be in terms of, you're going to have to pay Chatzi Nezek's worth of damage. And that Chatzi Nezek's worth of damage, you're going to have to pay Megufo. Now it happens to be in this case, you're not only paying Chatzi Nezek's worth of damage, you're also going to pay Nezek, you're paying Nezek Shalim, but one half of the Nezek Shalim, in other words, Chatzi Nezek's worth of damage is going to be paid Megufo. The other half isn't. And so this, now we can justify Rav Elazar's opinion. We can say that in the case of Tzroros, he's going to say Nezek Shalom, is also going to say that you pay Megufo. He's going to hold like Sumchas, that's true, it's a case of Tzroros, of Orche, but he's also going to say that you pay Megufo because he holds like Rav Yehuda. He holds like Rav Ada bar Ava's explanation of Rav Yehuda of Tzad Tamas B'Mkom Medes, so you're going to have to pay Chatz Nezek's worth of the damage, you're going to have to pay Megufo. And this is the Gemara's way to salvage the case, so that now if I can justify Rav Elazar's opinion to say Nezek Shalom Megufo, now I can still say, so what do you see? You see that according to the Chachamim, in the case of Tzroros, you're going to pay Chatzi Nezek Megufo. Why is that? Because the Chachamim hold, this is now, if the Chachamim say Chatzi Nezek Megufo, in the case of Tzroros, now we can address Rava's question. Okay, but the Gemara has a big problem with this understanding to establish that Rav Elazar is picking up with Rav Yehuda's opinion. But Be'ezras Hashem, we'll pick up with that